I bought Paco Rabanne Phantom Intense. This is the second flanker in the Phantom line, and it follows Phantom Parfum, which is a fragrance I quite like. This takes the Phantom DNA in a more fresh direction, in a quite mass appealing blend, and I've been wearing it for some time, and it's time for me to share my thoughts on the pros and cons of this fragrance. So before I begin, I would love to know what you think of Phantom Intense and how you would rate it from 1 to 10, so make sure you comment. And if you love fragrances and smelling good, then please drop a like on this video and make sure you hit that subscribe. I basically upload every single day and you will smell good for sure. So let's take a look at the notes. Some of the notes in Paco Rabanne Phantom Intense are cardamom, cedarwood, clary sage, lavender, lemon, orange blossom, rum absolute and vanilla. So vanilla has been the dominating note in so many releases lately, and I'm gonna say lavender is almost right up there with vanilla. It feels like a lot of newer releases have lavender in them, and I'm really not complaining though. I absolutely love the scent of lavender, and Phantom Intense does open up with quite a rich dose of it. This to me is a rich and intense dose of lavender that smells a bit different depending on how you smell it. Off my skin it's rich, sort of a deep, and a bit sweet. Off paper it's a bit more fresh and not as sweet, and up in the air it's even fresher and lighter. So my suggestion, if you try it out, is like always, try it on your skin if you can. And if you try it in different ways, please do be aware that this does smell a bit differently depending on how you spray it, where you spray it. The cardamom is right there with the vanilla, adding even more richness to the opening, as well as a bit of warmth. The opening overall is an aromatic fresh kind of opening, but I do not think this is the freshest of fresh when it comes to lavender. And like I said before, this is a richer dose of it, and the cardamom does add a bit of weight to it. There's a bit of sweetness in the opening as well, adding a bit of sexiness to it, and I like it. Like aromatic, fresh, slightly warm, spicy, and a bit sweet and incredibly smooth and creamy. There's a zingy and fizzy kind of lemony freshness in the opening as well, but it fades quite quickly. In less than 5 minutes, this starts to head into the mid. And while I absolutely enjoy the opening, this is where things start to get a bit more interesting. I'm getting orange blossom together with a slightly smoky, sweet and rich vanilla. But the orange blossom smells a bit different, and it's almost like a muted version of it that's less floral and more fresh, if that makes sense. So vanillic, a bit sweet, the orange blossom, a slight hint of something sort of a smoky, and everything being a bit creamy and smooth. As it dries down, I'm getting a mostly aromatic, vanillic and woody scent with an almost fruity kind of sweetness and a hint of booziness. I find that quite often with fragrances that opens up lavender intense. The lavender softens up quite a bit in the dry down. This, however, manages to stay quite aromatic and surprisingly fresh in the dry down. And I really like the combo with the vanilla and that soft and almost light kind of woodiness. And that's one quite noticeable difference compared to the other two ones, in that this stays lighter and sort of a fresher even through the dry down, whereas the others have more depth to it as they dry down. It's got a bit of sexy sweetness to it, but it's definitely not an intense kind of sweetness. So a quick comparison. Quickly comparing Phantom Intense with Phantom Parfum and the original. I'm going to do a proper full sort of in-depth comparison in a separate video, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on that one. Phantom Parfum is also aromatic and spicy fresh in the opening with lavender and cardamom, but its freshness feels a bit different, and it's also not as creamy and smooth as Phantom Intense. The dry down of Parfum feels a bit heavier for sure and more woody than Intense, with a more noticeable dose of patchouli and vetiver. The original EDT has a different kind of fresh opening, a different kind of sweetness, and it's not as aromatic fresh as the other two, and it has that earthiness to it that you will either absolutely love or dislike. Quickly comparing them, I do feel that Phantom Intense is more based on Phantom Parfum, and it takes the heart of it and pushes it in a more fresh direction, but with a twist. This stays lighter and fresher in the dry down compared to both other Phantoms, whereas those have more depth to it in the dry down. So what about compliments and mass appeal? This is a very likable mix of lavender with vanilla and a very soft and almost light kind of woodiness that most people most definitely will enjoy getting a whiff of. Out of the three Phantoms, it's definitely the most mass appealing one. So what about the performance? So I do need to do more comparisons with the other ones in the line, but based on my wearing experience so far, it definitely feels like it's not on the same level as the parfum, which most people can pick up on. It might be on par with the EDT or slightly below it. It's definitely not a weak scent, but it does not, at least on my skin, project far, and I do not think it's extremely long lasting. I definitely recommend spraying more, and while you might experience better projection than me, I would not expect an intensely projecting or long lasting scent. So okay-ish performance, it's not weak, but it's absolutely not beast mode. So when should you use Phantom Intense? Phantom Intense is definitely a year-round kind of fragrance with a focus on spring and summer and sort of an early fall. And while it's not as fresh as a fresher can be, it's not a heavy kind of scent. The scent itself is a very easy to wear and likable one, and I do feel it works for pretty much any occasion, regardless if it's for work, for school, a date night, or going out. However, if you're going out and want something noticeable, then you might want to choose something with more intense projection. So who's this fragrance for? If you enjoy the parfum, then I think you'll most likely enjoy this. And if you're one of those that absolutely dislike the EDT, then you might actually enjoy this, because this is quite different compared to the original. And it does not have that sort of a earthiness that the OG has. And if you absolutely love lavender and vanilla, then you will most likely enjoy this. And if we turn that around, if you dislike the scent of lavender or don't want something with vanilla in it, then this ain't for you. This is for someone who enjoys aromatic scents with a focus on lavender and who usually enjoy vanillic and soft woody scents. If you already have a lot of fragrances in your collection that are pulling in the more fresh direction with a focus on lavender, then maybe stay away, unless you're absolutely in love with lavender and want every kind of variety there is. And if you usually only go for sort of a beast mode, super strong kind of fragrances, then this is probably not for you, because this ain't beast mode. So what are some of the alternatives to Phantom Intense? The most obvious alternative is Phantom Parfum, which to me is a richer scent with more depth to it. It's less fresh and more woody, but the core with the lavender and vanilla is in it, even though it smells slightly different. The original is of course an alternative, and I know a lot of guys dislike it, but I like it and it's a compliment getter. Even though there are some similarities, its freshness is definitely different, and it has a noticeable earthiness and smokiness to it that you will either absolutely love or absolutely dislike. Do not blind by the EDT. For something a bit different but with a focus on lavender and woodiness, there's a Bad Boy Cobalt from Carolina Herrera. It does have a gorgeous fruity sweetness to it, which together with the lavender and its sort of a lighter kind of woodiness makes it a great mass appealing compliment getter. The only issue I have with Carolina Herrera Bad Boy Cobalt is its performance. It's definitely not the strongest of scents, and I always spray quite a bit with it. Going in the direction of Orange Blossom, we have a YSL Myself. It definitely has a different kind of fresh opening, and the Orange Blossom in it is quite different compared to that of Phantom Intense. And it's very much focused on freshness and Orange Blossom with a soft kind of woodiness. Out of all these alternatives, I do feel that Phantom Parfum is the closest to Phantom Intense, but it does have a bit more depth to it. So let's talk about price. I found this on sale and paid about 70 bucks for 50 ml. And I've seen 100 mils going from anywhere from 90 bucks all the way up to 140. So I highly recommend looking for sales or looking at different discounters so that you make sure that you don't pay full retail for it. So how am I going to rate Phantom Intense? This is most definitely a really nice scent. It does have that Phantom DNA, but going in a more sort of a fresh direction. It's definitely a mass appealing and easy to wear kind of scent, and I definitely like it, but I do not think it's a masterpiece. And for me at least, this, yeah, the foundation of Phantom Intense is absolutely gorgeous, and there's not a single doubt that this smells really, really good. And I do like that this goes in, this takes that Phantom DNA in a sort of a fresh, more fresh direction. But at the same time, I do feel that this sort of lacks a bit of depth and intensity. I'm going to give Paco Rabanne Phantom Intense 7.5 or 8, somewhere around that. So what would have made me rate this higher? I think, like I said before, I think the foundation with that sort of a Phantom DNA made fresher is a great one. The combination of lavender and vanilla is definitely a great one. However, I do feel that once this hits the dry down, it gets a bit sort of too thin, if that makes sense. And I would have absolutely loved for this to have a bit more intensity and depth to it. And I do know that that sounds a bit weird, because I just said that I do enjoy its fresher and sort of a lighter take on that Phantom DNA, but it almost like this gets a bit too thin. So more intensity, a bit more depth to it, and perhaps also a bit more sweetness is what I feel would have made me rate this higher. Now, I would absolutely love to know how you feel about Paco Rabanne Phantom Intense. If you think this is a good men's fragrance, if you dislike it, if you hate it, and how you would rate it from 1 to 10, so make sure you comment. Like this video, I really appreciate it. Make sure you hit that subscribe, make sure you check out the videos over there, and I'll see you in the next one.